I look at what's going on in the world today, all of the entitlement mentality we have, all of the victim mentality we have. And I say, man, somebody's got to shake people up and grab them by the throat and say, stop thinking this way. We're going to enter the most cataclysmic time in human history. And if we want to survive the challenges we're going to face, we're going to have to think at a higher level. Everybody who's listening right now, they're in their business. Say, well, okay, well, that doesn't apply to me because my business is different. And those are the people who are going to get screwed if they don't wake up.
Top leaders, meaningful conversation, actionable advice, bulldoze complacency, ignite inspiration, create impact. Produced by Southwestern family of companies. This is the Action Catalyst.
So Randy Gage is in the Speaker Hall of Fame. Randy's a critical thinker. You might be offended. You will probably laugh, but you will definitely think differently. And I know that's what his book, Mad Genius, is all about. And so, Randy, welcome to the show.
Great to be on with you.
So let's dive into Mad Genius.
Well, at some point in your life, I think if you're on the right path, you want to move from success to significance. It's not about how much money you can make or how many cars you can have anymore. It's about, am I really making a difference? I wrote Mad Genius to make a difference. I want to change the way people think. It's a very arrogant concept, right? I was doing an interview on a radio station, I forget where, and they said, do you really write books to change the world? You know, isn't that a little presumptuous? I said, well, that's not a little presumptuous. That's a lot of presumptuous, but that's exactly why I write books. Otherwise, I wouldn't write them. I write books that I want to read. I write because I have to write, because I have things that I feel I need to say. And I look at what's going on in the world today, all of the entitlement mentality we have, all of the victim mentality we have. And I say, man, somebody's got to shake people up and grab them by the throat and say, stop thinking this way. We're going to enter the most cataclysmic time in human history. And if we want to survive the challenges we're going to face, we're going to have to think at a higher level. This is the manifesto for entrepreneurs, because I believe in the power of free enterprise. I think that's what's going to save the world. I mean, people, it's great, you know, you're having a protest and you go around with signs, well, save the rainforest. Okay, great. Well, how many trees did we cut down to make those signs? If you want to save the rainforest, you know how you save the rainforest? You go and buy it. And I support charities that do that, for instance, where they buy acres and acres of rainforest and then deed them into a trust. And that's how you have to do it. You want to be successful. Like here, I'm in Southern California, and they're like, if you wash your car, they'll shoot you. If you water your lawn, you'll go to prison because, you know, there's such a water shortage. It's not a water shortage. We live on a planet that 3/4 of it is water. What there's a shortage of is desalinated water. But let's not say there's a water shortage. There's really not. So how do we solve that? We solve that with free enterprise. We need the technology that makes it. And that's where I think free enterprise comes in. The profit motive there causes people to invest, to innovate, to develop things, because, of course, the greatest ways to create wealth are to solve problems and add value. Yeah. And that's what I'm doing with the book, is trying to get people to think in ways like an entrepreneur, to say, well, how can I solve problems? How can I add value? Because that's what's going to save the world.
When you talk about free enterprise saves the world, you know, you talk a lot about limiting beliefs and how a lot of times people think that just to be rich, you have to be bad or you have to take advantage of people. And, you know, obviously that's not what you're saying here, but your background, you were in prison as a teenager.
Well, I was in jail at 15 years old for armed robbery and burglary. And I had a father of a girl I had gone to school with before I got expelled, who came in to see me in my jail cell and said, you don't belong here. I've read your files and you test so high in reading comprehension. You're at college level and you skip 5 weeks in a row and then you show up and you take a test and you pass it. You're capable of great things. Nobody had ever told me anything like that. I mean, the thing I heard growing up was, How can somebody so smart be so stupid? If I heard that once, I heard it 100,000 times. And because this teacher, he was a teacher, the father of this girl, he was actually a teacher. His name was Baxter Richardson. So he came in this jail cell and he tells me, I'm capable of great things. I so desperately wanted to believe him that I believed him. And because I believed him, it was true. You really own it, something like that, and you accept it, you manifest it, you make it true. And so that changed my whole thought process and changed the way I approached the world. And then I went out and did the hard work and said, okay, I'm going to start as a grill cook and work my way up to a manager trainee and assistant manager and then restaurant manager and get a big ring with all those keys and wear a tie and walk around and say, well, how's your dinner this evening? Which to me at that point in my life was the ultimate level of success, right? If you could, because I was starting as a minimum wage dishwasher. So ultimate level of success would have been restaurant manager with the key ring, you know? And of course that changed as my vision of prosperity changed, my vision of the window through which I see the world. But I can attribute it back to that Baxter coming into my jail cell and seeing something for me before I could see it for myself.
That's inspiring. And in Mad Genius, you talk about the big lie. What is the big lie for entrepreneurs?
Here's the big lie for entrepreneurs. If you get 1,000 of them and you say, just grab 1,000 people off the street and say, what is the opposite of success? 999 will say failure. But that's the big lie, because the opposite of success is not failure. The opposite of success is mediocrity. And failure is actually part of the success process. It's inherent in the DNA of success that we will attempt things and fail, that we will make mistakes, that we will modify based on those mistakes, that we will learn from those mistakes. We use them as stepping stones to develop character, to learn new skills, to change our approach. And some of the case studies I'm looking at in the book, whether it's Steve Jobs at Apple or Richard Branson, or look at people who have done some pretty extraordinary things, and you see a lot of failure along the way, a lot of risk. My last book was called Risky is the New Safe, because I really believe that the companies and the organizations and the people that play it safe right now, those are the ones that are going to get run over. Because that's the riskiest thing you can do, because we're now entering what I believe this next decade is going to be the most tumultuous decade in the course of human history. There will be more breakthrough changes that take place in the next decade than at any time because of the accelerated level of growth. We will see the advent of human cloning during this next decade. And we could argue and debate the moral and ethical ramifications of that for decades, and we probably will. But 150 countries could sign a treaty tomorrow to say, okay, we're not going to allow human cloning. There will be some country somewhere that says, we don't have diamonds, we don't have oil, we don't have natural gas. We'll be the cloning country. And if they can offer North Korea 5 million cloned soldiers, North Korea might just want to make that offer, right? So cloning, genetic engineering, people are going to be able to order designer babies saying, I want the Peyton Manning quarterback gene. I want the Maya Angelou poetry gene. I mean, with transplants, 3D printing, where social media changes the business landscape, where mobile will change how we buy, how we sell, how we communicate, how we train, how we eat, how we're entertained, how we do everything, right? It blows up branding forever. Mobile will change marketing more than radio, direct mail, TV, and the internet combined, right? So we're in this, the advance of artificial intelligence and getting closer and closer to the point where the acquired knowledge of AI is greater than all acquired human knowledge. When that happens, that'll be the single biggest event in the course of human history. Whether you go back whatever your belief system are, if you think we started 6,000 years ago with Adam and Eve, or go back 13 billion years to the Big Bang, there will be no event more important to human history than the second that artificial intelligence equals and then surpasses 1 second later all acquired human knowledge. And that could happen in the next decade.
So what do you do? Like, so some of that's terrifying, right? Some of that's like, oh my gosh, what do you do to prepare for that?
That's the thing. That's why I wrote the book. People got to understand that they're not prepared for this yet, because there's nobody on earth who's prepared for this. And the only way to prepare for it is to accelerate our level of thinking and thinking at higher levels. Uber, Airbnb. Here's the fascinating thing. Uber was created by people who were not in the taxi business. Amazon was created by people who were not in the bookstore business. Dan Burris, futurist, he was speaking to the National Booksellers Convention, whatever that is, years ago. And he told them, somebody in this room needs to start an online bookstore. Because if you don't do it, somebody else is going to do it. So he had thousands of people in the convention hall, and none of them did it. Now, why not? Because what they said was, well, that's not how people buy books. People go into bookstores and they browse the shelves and they get recommendations from the clerks. And now we've added a coffee bar. And so they come in and they sit down and they relax on a Friday night. And then 2 years later, Jeff Bezos started Amazon. So you look at Uber. Do we think that nobody in the taxi business ever thought, well, gee, we could use GPS and track where every car is at every second and send the ride that's closest to the fare? Do we think somebody in the taxi business might have thought, well, we could develop a mobile app and then they could call when they want to get picked up and they could rate the driver? Or did nobody in the taxi business think, well, we could allow them to pay with their smartphone with Google Pay or Apple Pay or, whatever? Of course they did. But they did nothing on it because they were in the space. Because when all the old cliche, when all you have a hammer, everything looks like a nail. So the guys in Dan's audience all like, I've got the bookstores and I pay the rent and I've got a 25-year lease and 27 employees. Their only thing is, how do I get more people to come into my store? Whereas a guy on the outside, like Bezos, says, why do we need the store? So the people in the taxi business say, well, I just spent $50,000 on a new radio system and I have all these dispatchers who work for me. And this is the way we've done it for 30 years. And it's always worked this way. That's the thing you got to protect against. Everybody who's listening right now, they're in their business. Say, well, that doesn't apply to me because my business is different. And those are the people who are going to get screwed if they don't wake up. And Steve Jobs, did Steve Jobs have anything to do with radio stations or record companies? Yet he changed the music industry more than any person on earth.
Mm-hmm. I don't want to leave without asking you this other question, because there's a big movement of be an entrepreneur, have your own business, be your own guy. But one of the things you touch on Mad Genius, on how the best companies are treating people more like entrepreneurs. And so those people don't have to really be entrepreneurs. They can still be inside of a company. Can you kind of just like break that whole little piece of the book down?
Yeah, that's all about culture. Why can you go in an In-N-Out Burger on a Saturday afternoon with a line, 100 people outside the door, 200 cars lined up around the block, literally a traffic hazard? There's some minimum wage kid cleaning the dining room, keeping the restroom spotless, refilling the ketchup bottle, smiling, sweeping up, greeting everybody. How do they get him to do that? How come you can go into an Ace Hardware store and ask for the most arcane, ridiculous thing that nobody has asked for in 7 weeks, and the clerk will say, that is on aisle 13, right near the end on the second shelf from the bottom? That's culture. You create that culture in an organization. And the biggest thing that's an impediment to it that I see is this protecting against failure, right? Because nobody wants to make mistakes, because if you make a mistake, you get ostracized, or you get demoted, or you get passed over for promotion, or you get fired. Whereas the great companies, they not only allow their people to fail, they expect them and encourage them to fail. I think the great companies, they have this attitude like venture capitalists. So if you take Jason Calacanis or Chris Sacca or someone, they're going to invest in 100 ventures, and they're going to know that 97 of them probably aren't going to work out. But they're hoping for 1 or 2 unicorns in the bunch, and there's 4 or 5 that might not work out there, but they'll find some breakthrough that'll help them segue into a different business and a different model that might work out there. And they expect that a bunch of those things won't work out, but they know that's part of the process. And companies that are willing to do that, that allow companies to, I'm not talking about missing your third quarter stock price by 2% or whatever. I'm talking about allowing somebody to open up a division and have a spectacular failure. The kind of failure Steve Jobs had when they first ran him out of Apple the first time around. And then realized, well, maybe that wasn't, which was probably the right move for Apple at that point, but just as bringing him back was the right move, because they needed that level of thinking again. And so how do you create that kind of culture? You give your people space to be brilliant, to make mistakes. You allow them to fail. You encourage them to fail. And they know they can fail and not get demoted, not lose their promotion, not lose their job, and know that they're going to learn that lesson, grow from it, modify it, test, track, come back with something better. And that's where the breakthroughs live.
Wow. Well, Randy, where do you want people to go to connect with you and learn more about you?
All right. So randygage.com, that's my Starfleet Command main site, and randygage.com. And then, of course, follow me on social media. I'm everywhere: Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I love to connect with people and discuss the work.
Nice. Well, the last little question I have for you, do you really believe that everybody has genius inside of them? And if so, how do they access that?
I really do believe everybody has genius in them. And it's different with every person. When Ray Chen picks up a violin, that's a certain kind of genius. When LeBron James is on the basketball court, that's a different kind of genius. When Stephen King writes one of his novels, that's an entirely different kind of genius. And Maya Angelou has hers, and Oprah Winfrey has hers. And we have all got our unique kind of genius. And that's why I wrote Mad Genius, because I really do believe that everybody has that. And that's what my manifesto is about, is to get people to answer the call and step into their greatness, because I really know they have that mad genius inside of them.
Yeah. Thank you for making some time here, Randy. We wish you all the best, and keep inspiring people to find their genius.
All right. Thanks for having me on.
If you enjoy this podcast, please make sure to subscribe. And to stay updated on everything that the Action Catalyst is up to, make sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Action Catalyst Podcast, and on Twitter at Catalyst_Action. And thanks for listening.